Now it's time to take over one of these units and make it your own. Most of this is pretty straightforward. You're just going to type whatever directions you want your students to follow and whatever order you want them to do them in these cells. If you want to, you can keep the numbers like step 5, do this, type it any way you want. If you need more space, you could just grab this divider between two columns and stretch it out to make it as wide as you want that unit to be. Everything else will go in to fit. Later, I'll show you how to add pictures and links inside these directions. And as you're going through and changing these, just keep in mind each step has a little checkbox next to it. And the students are going to be checking this off as they're going. I'm going to undo, undo, undo. And oh, by the way, you should notice that milestone counter was going off. As we check off these steps, students are going to see that this thing keeps track of their milestones. So most of these directions are pretty self-explanatory. If you mess up, you can always just take one of these cells and copy it with whatever your keyboard shortcut is and paste back in again. And that can overcome a lot of your mistakes. I want to point out a couple of specific kinds of directions that I use. Like I've got this feedback box right here. Occasionally in a self-directed class, I want to make sure that my students are checking in with me to show me their progress. It just creates opportunities to have conversations with students to make sure that you're doing that face-to-face part of the class that's so critical in a self-directed class. So I've got a big box right here that just says, please ask the teacher for feedback. You must ask the teacher. And when my students call me over for that, I just type some feedback on here for them, and when I hit enter, the box turns green to show that they've done that, and the student can check the box right there. I also require peer feedback, so my students do a lot of projects, and they have to show someone else in the class their progress as they're going, and just get some quick feedback. And the students just often write pretty simple things right there, and then they can check that box. If you didn't want to use any of those in your class, all you got to do is copy and paste one of these regular kinds of directions on top of it, but make sure you get the checkbox that goes with it too. So in this case, I would click and drag to select this cell with directions and that cell that's got the checkbox, copy that, my case Command C, and click over here, and then when I paste, it's going to overwrite both cells. As I copied two cells, so it's going to overwrite two cells. And go over to this one and do the same thing. Just paste that in there. In this case, there was two cells that were merged, so it overdid both of them. And you can just go through and paste as many directions as you want to here. Let me draw your attention to the next, kind, and this is a choice. Choose one of these options. Occasionally, I want my students to make a choice. And there's just a little drop-down box right here, and here's the various options for what they can choose. And when students choose an option, it turns green to show that they've completed that task. I'm going to undo that. Now, if you want to modify a choice box, just right-click on the box and go down to data validation. For some reason, that's called data validation. And so this is now the list of items that you saw, option 1, option 2, option 3, and you can type whatever you want to in those spaces. Just notice that there's a comma between each item in the list, and there's no spaces before or after that comma. So you could just change option 1 to be whatever you wanted to here, and I want my students to choose between these options. I'm not going to fill them all in for you, but you can see I've now got 3 options, 4 and 5. And by the way, you could change that to other things instead of a list of items, but I tend to use lists. I'm going to hit save, and when I do, now if you were to say click to choose, you'll see there's those new options that I changed, that I typed in there, where the commas separated them and students could choose them if they wanted. Again, if you don't want your students to choose, just select some blank direction. Make sure you get its checkbox too, so I've selected both those cells, copy that, and then paste over it, and now that's gone. And you can do whatever you want to with it. Now, it's often the case that you end up getting all kinds of messes like these, and sometimes you don't need all the steps. I use this teacher sign off when the unit is complete. If you don't want that, again, just get rid of it. Let's talk about copying and pasting big chunks of things. Let's say you wanted to click and drag across, let's start with this cell and go over to there and select a whole block of them. You can totally do that. Copy, in my case Command C, click where you want to start overwriting and paste. And it overwrites all those. So if I wanted to go up here and overwrite these that had already started, just paste, do that. If you need to extend more steps, I think gave you a default of 30 steps in each one of these, just paste on top of here. We'll fix this later. You're going to make a mess right now, and I'll show you how to clean up that mess. But let's say you need to go beyond 30, just paste as many additional rows of directions and checkboxes as you want down here. Later, again, we'll clean up all that stuff to make it work. We'll also show you how to clean up formatting like this green that isn't supposed to be there. That's going to be a future lesson that you'll work your way through. So you can copy and paste as much as you want. You can also copy and paste these background colors. Let's say you only wanted 5 steps in this unit. I'm going to take one of these empty cells that's got some nice purple in it. I'm going to copy it with my keyboard shortcut. I'm going to go up to the last direction I wanted, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. After this, I'm done. So I'm going to click and drag across all the directions and checkboxes that I don't want. Just drag all the way down here. And I've selected all the ones that I don't want, and now I'm just going to paste. And I just pasted purple on top of all those cells, and I'm left with just the 5 steps that I wanted my students to follow. Later I'll teach you how to clean up these zeros that are going to go down there, and your students will be able to check off those boxes as they go. We're going to leave them unchecked because students are going to do that later. And so go through all of your units and type the directions you want, extend it to be as many steps as you want, copy and paste the background colors to cover up anything you don't want. If you want these feedbacks, use them. If you don't, of course, these can be copied and pasted too. Get that cell, get its checkbox, and get the feedback line below, copy it, and we could paste as many of these feedbacks as we needed to. When I do a feedback, I always get the feedback checkbox step, and the feedback is below. If you like these choices, you can copy and paste as many of them you want to. Make sure to get the checkbox with it, copy that, paste, paste, and again, so you can customize these feedbacks or these steps to be as much as you want. Go through and put in all the steps you want to for the units that you are doing for this class.